We are conditioned to chase a life of unimaginable fortune, viewing it as the ultimate trophy for a life well lived. But what if that grand prize was nothing more than a hollow victory? This is a narrative that boldly proposes that the greatest wealth can be found not in abundance, but in a single courageous choice to walk away from it all. It's a heartaching account that flips the script on the conventional fairy tale, telling the incredible story of how a woman left her billionaire groom at the altar only to discover true love with a broke singer she met that very same night. Encore. One side of our story, you have Ashley Ford, a woman living a fairy tale. Engaged to a powerful billionaire, she had a life of private jets, extravagant parties, and limitless luxury. But beneath the flawless surface, she was suffocating, a beautiful bird in a golden cage, about to sign away the last piece of her soul. On the other side, there's Henry Simmons, a broke singer with a worn-out guitar and a heart full of songs nobody was listening to. His world wasn't about what he owned, but about what he felt, a stark contrast to the cold, transactional life Ashley was trapped in. This isn't just a love story, it's a collision of two completely different worlds, sparked by a single desperate act of courage. We're about to take you on a journey that begins with a runaway bride fleeing a cathedral and ends with a powerful lesson about the real meaning of wealth. You're going to witness a story of redemption, of overcoming impossible odds, and of a plot twist so powerful it feels like destiny itself. We believe that true wealth is found in the heart, and this story is the ultimate proof. But make no mistake, this choice comes at a cost. Her escape triggers the fury of a powerful, humiliated man who refuses to be defied. This story is also a fight against a relentless billionaire who will use his immense influence to sabotage their connection, ruin a man's dream, and reclaim what he believes is his property. It's a testament to the fact that choosing your own happiness often means fighting a war against the expectations of the entire world. So get ready for an emotional ride that will restore your faith in second chances and true love. Before we dive into this incredible story, we want to know how far it's reaching. Please let us know in the comments what beautiful city or town you're watching from right now. And if you believe in the power of love over money, do us a huge favor, hit that like button. Make sure you're following the channel so you don't miss what happens next. And share this video with someone whose heart you think will be touched by this story. Well, you see, some stories don't start with a yes, but with a resounding no. Standing at the altar, bathed in the light of 1,000 camera flashes, Ashley Ford felt the word lodge in her throat. It was a suffocating feeling, a sudden, sharp realization that this perfectly orchestrated life wasn't hers. The billionaire groom, the flawless ceremony was all a beautiful cage. This surprise escape wasn't just a change of mind, it was a jailbreak, a desperate sprint for a breath of real air, a plot twist nobody saw coming. Her destiny, she suddenly knew, wasn't waiting at the end of that aisle. The heavy church doors slammed shut behind her, a punctuation mark on the end of a chapter. Out on the chaotic city streets, she was a ghost in white, a runaway bride in a sea of indifferent faces. The initial shock gave way to a wave of cold reality. She was utterly alone, humiliated and yet, strangely, empowered. This was the first choice she'd made for herself in years, a difficult step towards overcoming the golden expectations that had nearly crushed her spirit. It was a heart-aching moment of pure, unadulterated panic and freedom, all rolled into one. She stumbled for blocks, the silk of her dress dragging on the grimy pavement, a stark symbol of her two worlds colliding. That's when she saw a dimly lit bar with a flickering neon sign, a haven that promised anonymity. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't sophisticated, but it was real. It felt like a place where a person's worth wasn't measured by their bank account. For a woman who had just walked away from a billionaire, this humble sanctuary felt like the richest place on earth, a necessary stop on a long road to redemption. Inside, the world slowed down. The air was thick with the scent of spilled beer and quiet desperation, a universe away from her life of curated perfection. And then she heard him. On a tiny makeshift stage in the corner sat a man with a worn-out guitar. He wasn't playing for fame or fortune, he was playing because he had to. This was Henry Simmons, a broke singer whose only currency was the raw, unfiltered emotion in his voice. His music filled the empty spaces in the room, and unexpectedly, the empty spaces in her heart. The melody was a simple, soulful tune, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. It was a song about loss, hope, and the kind of second chance you don't even know you're looking for. Ashley felt an immediate emotional connection to the sound, a warmth that all her experience's money could never buy. This heartaching performance was a surprise, a beautiful and unexpected gift in the middle of her personal wreckage. It felt like stumbling upon an oasis after years in a desert of superficiality. As the last chord faded, the sparse crowd offered a smattering of applause. But Henry Simmons wasn't looking at them. His eyes, full of a deep, quiet understanding, found hers across the room. In that single shared glance, a new story began at a fairy tale of riches, but a true love story born from the ashes of a life left behind at the altar. The billionaire's world was loud and demanding, but this quiet connection, this unspoken promise of something real, felt like the only thing that mattered now. As Henry's last note hung in the air, a silence fell over the bar, but inside Ashley's mind, a storm was raging. Her thoughts rewound to the life she'd just escaped, a highlight reel of cold, calculated moments. She remembered the billionaire proposing, not with a heart full of love, but with a businesslike precision, as if closing a merger. Their entire relationship had been a series of photo opportunities and transactional gestures, each one more hollow than the last. There was no warmth, no genuine connection, just a checklist of high society expectations. Every dinner party was a performance, every conversation a negotiation. She wasn't a partner, she was an asset, the final, perfect acquisition to complete his portfolio. The weight of being constantly judged, of having to be flawless, was an emotional burden she could no longer carry. To his friends and family, she was just another beautiful object he owned. The feeling of being humiliated was a quiet, constant companion, lurking beneath the surface of every forced smile and polite nod. She was a doll in a gilded cage, and she'd almost forgotten how to be human. She recalled the planning of the wedding, an event that felt more like a state dinner than a celebration of love. He had outsourced every decision, from the flowers to the vows to a team of professionals. His only input was on the budget and the guest list, ensuring every powerful person he knew would be there to witness his triumph. The altar wasn't a sacred place of union, it was a stage for him to showcase his ultimate prize. It's no wonder she felt absolutely nothing standing there beside him. The stark contrast between that cold, sterile world and the raw honesty of the song she just heard was staggering. Henry's music, born from struggle and passion, held more value than all the diamonds her billionaire ex-fiance could ever buy. It was a heartaching reminder of what she had been starved of: genuine feeling. This broke singer, with nothing to his name, had offered her more in a single melody than the billionaire had in their entire soulless courtship. It was a surprise that shook her to her very core. The life she ran from was a masterpiece of illusion, a carefully constructed fantasy of happiness that was in reality an emotional wasteland. There was no room for mistakes, no space for vulnerability, and certainly no place for true love. It was a life of quiet desperation, of slowly suffocating under the weight of a golden pillow. The choice to become a runaway bride wasn't an act of madness, it was the ultimate act of self-preservation, her first step towards an authentic life. She looked up from her drink, the memories fading like a bad dream. Across the room, the musician, Henry Simmons, was packing up his guitar, his movements gentle and deliberate. He had no idea had just provided the soundtrack to her escape, that his music had become the anthem of her newfound freedom. The world she left behind was one of loud, empty promises, but the silence between his songs felt more profound than any words her ex had ever spoken. It wasn't just the lyrics or the melody, it was the soul behind the music that truly captured Ashley. In that dimly lit bar, the broke singer's voice wrapped around her like a warm blanket on a cold night. Each note was filled with a lifetime of experience of struggle, of hope, of overcoming obstacles she couldn't even imagine. This was a language her heart understood instantly, a deep and emotional dialogue that required no words. She felt seen, not for the dress she was wearing or the name she almost took, but for the broken person she was underneath. This feeling was such a profound surprise, a stark contrast to the sterile perfection she had been conditioned to accept. With the billionaire, every compliment felt like an assessment, every gift a down payment on her compliance. There was no real warmth, only the cold gleam of expensive things meant to distract her from the emptiness. Henry's music, however, was a gift of a different kind. It cost nothing, yet it was priceless. It was a heart-aching offering that asked for nothing in return, and it was utterly disarming. She realized that for years, she had been living in a state of emotional hibernation, completely numb to the world around her. His music was the thaw, the first ray of sunshine melting away the frost that had settled on her soul. It was a powerful reminder that true connection isn't forged in boardrooms or at charity galas, it's found in shared vulnerability. This was the beginning of a love story she didn't know she was looking for. A story that started not with a diamond, but with a simple, honest song. He sang of second chances and the kind of destiny that finds you when you least expect it. It was as if he was narrating her own life, giving voice to the secret hopes and fears she held deep inside. For a runaway bride hiding from the world, hearing her own turmoil reflected in a stranger's song was an incredibly moving experience. It made her feel less alone, less crazy for the drastic choice she had made at the altar. It was a validation that was both unexpected and deeply needed. The performance was a plot twist in her chaotic day. She had sought refuge from her life, but she hadn't expected to find a reason for a new one. The connection she felt was immediate and undeniable, a magnetic pull toward the authenticity he represented. This broke singer possessed a richness that made her billionaire ex seem utterly impoverished in comparison. It was the richness of spirit, of a life lived with passion and purpose, even in the face of hardship and financial struggle. Now, as he put his guitar away, the spell of the music was broken, replaced by the quiet hum of the bar. The warmth of the song lingered, but a new feeling began to surface in nervous curiosity. The music had connected their souls from a distance, but what would happen when the man behind the music closed that distance? The genuine emotion in his performance was one thing, but the kindness of the person himself was yet to be seen. Henry Simmons had seen his fair share of lonely souls filter through this bar, but had never seen anything quite like this. A woman, looking like a fallen angel in a ridiculously expensive wedding dress, huddled in the darkest corner. He could see the storm in her eyes, the mixture of fear and defiance. He wasn't a man of means, far from it, but he recognized a person in need of a simple human kindness. He knew his place as a broke singer, but he also knew his worth as a person. Approaching her slowly, he didn't ask what she was running from or who she'd left behind. Instead, he simply pulled up a chair and offered a gentle, unassuming smile. "That was a hell of an entrance," he said, his voice as warm and comforting as his music. "Long day at the office?" His subtle humor was a disarming surprise, a small gift that instantly eased the tension in her shoulders. He wasn't prying, he was offering a moment of normalcy in the middle of her chaos. For a runaway bride, this was everything. He offered her a listening ear, a safe space with no strings attached. As Ashley hesitantly began to speak, he just listened, not judging, not offering unsolicited advice. He didn't see a headline or a scandal. He saw a person who had made a brave, terrifying choice. He understood the courage it took to walk away from a life that was safe but suffocating. He gave her something the billionaire never could: his undivided, unconditional attention. It was a heartaching gesture of pure empathy. For Ashley, this was a revelation. Everyone in her previous life had an agenda, a motive. Kindness was a currency, used to buy loyalty or influence. But Henry's kindness was different. It was genuine, expecting nothing in return. He created a bubble of peace for her in the middle of the storm, allowing her to finally breathe. This quiet, unassuming man was providing a sanctuary, a place where she could begin the long process of her own emotional redemption. Throughout their conversation, he treated her not as a damsel in distress, but as an equal who had just fought a major battle. He saw her strength, not her vulnerability. This was a man who understood the importance of a second chance, because his own life was a series of them. He never once made her feel humiliated for her grand escape from the altar. Instead, he made her feel like a hero. He was a stranger, and yet he felt more like family than anyone she knew. As they talked, the world outside the bar, with its flashing lights and screaming headlines, seemed to fade away. The connection forged by his music was now solidifying through his simple, profound humanity. She was safe here with this broke singer who had nothing to offer but his time and his compassion. But as she started to relax, a cold dread began to creep in. She knew her exfiance. He wouldn't let this public humiliation go unanswered. He would be looking for her. While Ashley was finding a sliver of peace in a forgotten corner of the city, a very different scene was unfolding across town. The billionaire, whose name was now a hashtag for all the wrong reasons, was not grieving. He was strategizing. In his penthouse office, surrounded by screens and assistants, his emotional response was one of pure, calculated fury. This wasn't about a broken heart. This was about a broken deal. He had been publicly humiliated at the altar, and that was a debt that had to be settled. He deployed his security team with ruthless efficiency, their orders simple and direct: find her. He had access to every camera, every database, every digital footprint a person could leave. It wasn't a question of if they would find the runaway bride, but when. He paced his office like a caged tiger, barking orders into his phone. In his mind, this was just a temporary, albeit embarrassing, plot twist. It was a problem that money and power could and would solve. He saw her as a lost asset, not a lost love. He was absolutely certain he could buy her back. Everyone had a price. He believed it was the founding principle of his entire empire. Maybe she wanted a bigger jet, a private island, a controlling stake in a fashion brand. He mentally scrolled through a list of extravagant offerings, each more impersonal than the last. He simply couldn't comprehend that her departure was about anything other than leverage. The concept of her wanting a different life, a different kind of happiness, was completely foreign to him. This entire ordeal was a stain on his perfect reputation. The surprise and shock among his elite circle were palpable, and the whispers of ridicule were deafening to his ego. He needed to fix this, to reassert his control and dominance. Finding Ashley and bringing her back wasn't a gesture of love, it was a power move, a way to erase the narrative of the billionaire who was left at the altar. Her redemption, in his eyes, was returning to him and playing her part, restoring order to his world. His security chief soon called with a Lita credit card transaction for a bottle of water at a convenience store a few blocks from a dive bar downtown. A smirk crossed the billionaire's face. Of course she would end up in some grimy, pathetic place. It was a temporary fit of drama, a cry for attention. He imagined her, lost and scared, waiting for him to come and rescue her from her own foolish decision. This was just a brief, heart-aching detour before their destiny was put back on track. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door, his demeanor cold and resolute. He was on his way to collect what was his. The thought of some broke singer or opportunistic stranger getting in his way was laughable. He was a force of nature, a man who reshaped the world to his will. He was about to descend on that little bar and remind everyone, especially Ashley, of the power he wielded and the inescapable reality of their love story, a story he had written and would see through to the end. As the night deepened, the bar emptied out, leaving Ashley and Henry in their own little world. The conversation flowed effortlessly, a welcome relief after years of strained and performative dialogue. Ashley found herself opening up in ways she never thought possible, the story of the runaway bride tumbling out of her in a raw, emotional confession. Henry just listened, his presence a quiet anchor in her storm. He didn't offer solutions, he offered solidarity, a far more precious commodity. Then it was his turn. He spoke of his life with a humble, matter-of-fact honesty that she found incredibly compelling. He was, by every conventional measure, a broke singer. He talked about playing to empty rooms, about the side jobs he worked just to pay rent, and about the constant struggle of chasing a dream that seemed to move further away the harder he ran. He spoke of his financial hardship without a trace of self-pity, framing it simply as part of his journey, part of his overcoming. Yet, when he talked about music, his eyes lit up with a fire that could have illuminated the entire city. It was his passion, his purpose, his reason for being. He explained that music wasn't what he did, it was who he was. Had rather be poor and authentic than rich and empty. For Ashley, who had just fled a life of immense wealth and profound emptiness, his words resonated with the force of a divine revelation. This was the authenticity she had been craving. She was inexplicably drawn to his spirit. Here was a man who had next to nothing, yet he seemed to possess everything that truly mattered: passion, integrity, and a quiet sense of self-worth. It was a surprise to her own system, this powerful attraction to someone so completely opposite to the man she was supposed to marry. Their connection felt like destiny, a collision of two worlds that was meant to happen, a plot twist that would redefine both of their lives. This wasn't just a fleeting crush born from a dramatic situation, it felt deeper, more significant. It was the beginning of a heart-aching love story, one built not on status or wealth, but on a shared understanding of what it means to be true to oneself. His struggles didn't scare her, they inspired her. He was living proof that a person's value wasn't determined by their net worth. He was fighting for his dream, and she was just learning how to fight for her own. As the first hints of dawn began to paint the sky outside, a comfortable silence settled between them. The night had been a journey of its own, a second chance for Ashley to discover what she truly wanted from life. But just as a sense of hope began to bloom in her chest, the quiet of the morning was shattered. The bar door swung open with a violent crash, and a tall, imposing figure, flanked by two men in suits, stood silhouetted against the morning light, his face a mask of cold fury. The billionaire stormed into the bar, his expensive shoes crunching on the dusty floorboards. His eyes, cold and possessive, locked onto Ashley, completely dismissing Henry as if he were part of the furniture. "There you are," he boomed, his voice dripping with condescension. "The game is over, Ashley. Let's go home." He didn't ask if she was okay, he issued a command. He reached for her arm, his grip firm and proprietary, fully expecting her to comply and end this embarrassing episode. But Ashley flinched away from his touch, a small act of defiance that seemed to hang in the air. For the first time, the billionaire truly looked at Henry, his gaze sweeping over the broke singer's worn clothes and cheap guitar with utter contempt. "And who is this?" he sneered, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "Did you find yourself a new pet? Don't tell me you left me for this worthless musician with absolutely nothing to offer a woman like you." The insult was designed to inflict maximum damage. He then turned his venom on Henry directly, determined to humiliate him in front of Ashley. What could you possibly give her? The billionaire challenged, stepping closer to Henry. A song? A cramped apartment that smells of desperation? I own the building you probably live in. Every word was a calculated blow, an attempt to assert his dominance and remind everyone of the power imbalance. It was a classic move from his playbook. When faced with a problem, crush it into submission. This was a surprise attack of verbal brutality. Henry stood his ground, his expression calm, but his eyes holding a quiet strength. He didn't rise to the bait or get into a shouting match. He simply looked at Ashley, his gaze asking a silent question, "Are you okay?" His concern was for her, not for his own wounded pride. This silent, dignified response was a stark contrast to the billionaire's loud, arrogant display of power. In that moment, the difference between the two men was laid bare for Ashley to see. With absolute clarity, the billionaire, enraged by her hesitation and Henry's composure, grew even more aggressive. "Ashley, stop this foolishness. You created a massive plot twist, you had your little adventure, but now it's time to come back to reality." He saw this entire heart-aching encounter as a childish tantrum. He truly believed he could fix this, that he could erase this night and put their love story back on its predetermined, transactional path. He simply could not fathom that she would choose this life over his. The tension in the room was thick, enough to cut with a knife. The billionaire's ultimatum hung in the air, a final arrogant demand. He was so certain of his victory, so sure that his wealth and power were an irresistible force. He waited for Ashley to crumble, to admit her mistake, and to let him lead her away from this pathetic scene and back to the gilded cage he had prepared for her. But he had fundamentally misunderstood the woman standing before him. He was about to be very, very surprised. In that tense, suffocating silence, something inside Ashley Ford finally snapped. It wasn't loud or violent, it was a quiet, profound shift. She stepped forward, placing herself between the two men, her posture radiating a newfound strength. She looked her exfiance directly in the eye, her voice steady and clear, completely devoid of the fear that had once governed her. "No," she said, the single word echoing in the empty bar. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The billionaire's face hardened, a mask of disbelief and fury. "You think he has nothing to offer?" She continued, her voice gaining power with every word. "You're wrong. In the few hours I've known him, Henry has shown me more genuine respect and kindness than you have in all the years we've been together." This declaration was the emotional climax of her escape, the moment her redemption truly began. She was no longer the silent fiancée, she was a woman finding her voice, and it was a sound the billionaire had never heard before. She turned to gesture toward Henry, her expression softening. "He listened to me. He didn't judge me. He didn't try to fix me or buy me. He treated me like a human being." The comparison was a devastating blow to the billionaire's ego, a public dismantling of his entire value system. She was choosing the broke singer's empathy over his empire. She was choosing true love over a transaction, a heart-aching choice that was as brave as it was shocking. This was the ultimate plot twist in their broken love story. The billionaire was momentarily stunned into silence, completely humiliated. He had come here expecting to retrieve a possession, but instead, he was being confronted by a stranger, a woman he didn't recognize. "This is absurd," he finally stammered, his composure cracking. "You're throwing your entire life away for a fantasy, for a nobody." He couldn't process the reality of his defeat, the surprise of her choosing authenticity over the world of power and privilege he represented. He was losing control, and he hated it. Ashley stood firm, a pillar of conviction. "No," she corrected him calmly, "and not throwing my life away and taking it back." This was her moment of overcoming, the culmination of years of silent suffering. She was finally defending not just Henry, but herself. She was choosing a second chance at a life of meaning, a life where her worth wasn't tied to the man she was with. Her destiny was her own to write, and she was starting with this very sentence. Her words hung in the air, an undeniable, irreversible choice. She had publicly rejected him and everything he stood for, defending the broke singer who had offered her nothing but his soul. The billionaire's shock quickly morphed into a cold, dark rage. He had been defeated and publicly shamed. If he couldn't have her, he would make damn sure she, and the man she chose, would regret this day for the rest of their lives. His mind was already turning to a new strategy, not recovery, but revenge. The billionaire's retreat from the bar was not a surrender, it was a declaration of war. His public humiliation had festered into a venomous rage, and he was determined to make them pay. He didn't waste time on emotional outbursts. Instead, he did what he always did. He picked up the phone and began to leverage his immense power. His first target was the one person who represented his defeat, the broke singer who had dared to stand in his way, Henry Simmons. Within hours, the fallout began. The owner of the bar where they met received a call from his landlord's building had been bought by a shell corporation, and his lease was terminated, effective immediately. Next, Henry's handful of upcoming gigs, the small performances that barely paid his bills, were canceled one by one. The venue owners gave vague excuses, but the fear in their voices was unmistakable. The message was clear: anyone associated with Henry Simmons would face the billionaire's wrath. It was a systematic and ruthless campaign of sabotage. The billionaire's influence stretched into every corner of the city. He made calls to music promoters, to studio owners, to anyone who had ever given Henry a shred of opportunity, and he shut them all down. He made sure the word got out on the street: helping Henry was professional suicide. He was isolating him, cutting him off from his passion and his livelihood, aiming to prove he was the worthless nobody had claimed him to be. For Ashley, watching this unfold was a heart-aching agony. She saw the direct consequences of her choice, the price Henry was paying for his simple act of kindness. She felt an overwhelming sense of guilt, realizing the destructive power of the world she had left behind. The billionaire wasn't just trying to punish her, he was trying to break the spirit of the man she admired, to prove that his money could still control her destiny, even from a distance. This was his twisted form of a love story. Henry, however, met this onslaught with a quiet, resolute dignity. He was hurt, of course, and the financial pressure was immense. But he wasn't broken. He had faced adversity his whole life. This was just a bigger, uglier version of the obstacles he was used to overcoming. He reassured Ashley that this wasn't her fault, that the billionaire's actions revealed his own emptiness, not Henry's lack of worth. His resilience in the face of such overwhelming opposition only deepened her admiration for him. But the situation was becoming dire. With no gigs and no prospects, the walls were closing in. The billionaire's revenge was suffocating, a plot twist designed to leave them with no way out. Henry was effectively blacklisted, a musical pariah in his own city. It seemed as though the billionaire had won, successfully demonstrating that in his world, a broke singer stood no chance. Just when all hope seemed lost, Henry picked up his old, battered guitar. He had one last venue that couldn't be shut down. With every door slammed in his face, Henry realized he had to change the rules of the game. If the billionaire owned all the venues, he would create his own. He took his guitar, not to a bar or a club, but to the heart of the city's bustling public square. He found a spot, opened his worn guitar case for any spare change, and began to play. He wasn't performing for a record deal or for fame, he was playing to survive, to keep his spirit from being crushed by the weight of the sabotage. He didn't play his usual set of melancholic tunes. Instead, he played a new song, one he had written in the sleepless nights since he'd met Ashley. It was a raw, emotional ballad about her runaway bride with sadness in her eyes and a universe of strength in her soul. The song told the story of their chance meeting, a heartaching narrative of two lost souls finding a moment of connection against all odds. It was a song about hope, about a second chance that appears in the most unexpected of places. As he poured his heart out, his voice echoing across the square, people began to stop. They were drawn in by the raw honesty of his performance. In a world of overproduced pop, his authentic, powerful voice was a surprise, a revelation. Someone in the crowd pulled out their phone and started recording. The video captured it all: the passion in Henry's eyes, the sincerity in his voice, and the undeniable magic of the song he was singing. It was lightning in a bottle. The video was uploaded with a simple caption: "This broke singer in the city square has a story you need to hear." And then, something incredible happened. The internet did what it does best. The video was shared once, then 100 times, then thousands. People connected with the story, with the song's message of overcoming adversity for the sake of true love. By the end of the day, the video had gone viral. It was a digital wildfire, spreading faster than the billionaire's influence ever could. This was a plot twist that no one, least of all the billionaire, could have predicted. His attempt to silence Henry had backfired spectacularly. By forcing him out of the shadows and into the open, he had inadvertently given him the biggest stage of his life. The video was everywhere, and with it, the story of the powerful man who tried to crush a simple musician. The narrative was no longer about the billionaire's humiliation, it was about Henry's resilience and their budding love story. Suddenly, Henry Simmons wasn't a nameless broke singer anymore. He was the voice of a viral sensation, a symbol of artistic integrity, standing up to corporate bullying. The video was a testament to his talent and his spirit, a digital message in a bottle that had reached millions. The world was now listening, and his destiny, which had seemed so bleak just days before, was suddenly wide open with possibilities. The question was, who else was watching? Watching the video of Henry go viral was an incredibly emotional experience for Ashley. She saw not just a talented musician, but a man who had taken a situation meant to destroy him and turned it into something beautiful. In that moment, the final scales fell from her eyes. The contrast between the two men in her life became painfully, liberatingly clear. It wasn't just about wealth versus poverty, it was about the very definition of love itself. This was a truth she could no longer ignore. She finally understood that what her billionaire ex-fiance had called love was never love at all. It was ownership. It was about possession, control, and status. She was an acquisition, a beautiful object to be displayed. And her escape from the altar was a flaw in his collection, a stock that had plummeted. His rage and his attempts at sabotage weren't the actions of a heartbroken man, they were the desperate maneuvers of a CEO trying to mitigate a PR disaster and recover a lost asset. Henry's love, on the other hand, was something else entirely. It was quiet, steady, and selfless. He never once asked her for anything. He never made her feel responsible for the trouble that had befallen him. Instead, his primary concern was always for her happiness and her freedom. He supported her choice, not because it led her to him, but because it was the right choice for her. His love wasn't about caging her, it was about giving her the sky to fly in. This realization was a heartaching moment of clarity, a quiet redemption. For all the years she had spent confusing security with affection. True love, she now saw, doesn't seek to control, it seeks to empower. It doesn't demand, it gives. It isn't about making someone fit into your world, it's about celebrating the world they are. The billionaire wanted her to complete his life, while Henry was simply happy to be a part of hers, in whatever capacity she would have him. The viral video was a beautiful symbol of this difference. Henry hadn't sung the song for fame or to get back at his oppressor. He sang it because it was his truth, an honest expression of a profound connection. It was an act of creation in the face of destruction. This authentic act was now being celebrated by millions, a testament to the power of genuine emotion over calculated influence. This surprise turn of events felt like a validation from the universe itself. With this newfound understanding, Ashley felt a sense of peace settle over her. The guilt she had carried was replaced by a fierce sense of pride and loyalty. She had made the right choice, not just by running away, but by running towards something real. She knew their journey of overcoming was far from over. The world, especially her old world, was still watching, and the court of public opinion, particularly among her family and so-called friends, was about to deliver its own harsh verdict. Just as the anonymous support of the internet was lifting them up, the judgment of Ashley's own world came crashing down. Her phone, which had been silent for days, began to light up with calls and messages from her family and her circle of friends. They had seen the news, the headlines about the runaway bride, and now, the viral video of the broke singer. Their reaction was not one of concern for her well-being, but of unanimous, horrified condemnation. Her mother's voice was a mixture of tears and fury. "How could you do this to us?" she cried. "You had everything. A secure future, a life anyone would dream of, and you threw it all away for some musician from the streets?" They saw her choice not as an act of self-preservation, but as an act of supreme selfishness, a betrayal of their family's social standing. They were being humiliated, and in their eyes, it was all her fault. Her former friends were no better. The messages were dripping with condescending pity and thinly veiled glee. "We're so worried about you, darling," one text read. "It's a classic plot twist, but you need to be realistic. This little romance is sweet, but he can't give you anything real." They called Henry a penniless nobody, an opportunist who was using her for his 15 minutes of fame. They shamed her for trading a billionaire for a fantasy, for choosing a fleeting feeling over a lifetime of financial security. The pressure was immense, a coordinated emotional assault designed to make her doubt her own sanity. They painted a bleak picture of her future, a life of struggle, regret, and eventually, abandonment. They reminded her of the world she had left behind the galas, the yachts, the effortless luxury, and contrasted it with the perceived squalor of her new reality. Every word was a calculated attempt to break her resolve and force her to crawl back to the life she had rejected at the altar. This was a different kind of battle, more insidious than the billionaire's overt attacks. This was an attack on her confidence, on her very sense of self. For a moment, a sliver of doubt crept in. Had she made a terrible mistake? Was this quest for true love just a naive, childish dream? The weight of their collective disapproval was suffocating, and she felt utterly isolated, an outcast from the only world she had ever known. She felt the sting of their judgment, a deep and personal humiliation. But then she would look at Henry. She would see his quiet strength, his unwavering belief in his music, and most importantly, his unwavering belief in her. He never tried to defend himself against their accusations. He simply focused on creating his art, on building something beautiful out of the chaos. He was living proof that a life's richness couldn't be measured in dollars, and his quiet determination gave her the strength to stand against the storm of condemnation. While the world was busy passing judgment, Henry was busy creating. He heard the whispers, he saw the pain in Ashley's eyes from the constant criticism, and he knew that no argument or defense could ever silence her family's fears. Words were cheap, so he responded in the only way he knew how, through his music. He poured all of his feelings, his love for Ashley, his defiance against his critics, his belief in a different kind of wealth into a brand new song, an anthem for their unlikely love story. The song was a masterpiece of emotional storytelling. It wasn't just a love ballad, it was a philosophical statement. The lyrics spoke of the hollow gleam of palaces made of gold and the quiet warmth of a kitchen table. For two, it was a beautiful, heart-aching tribute to Ashley, celebrating her courage and her choice. It painted a vivid picture of a life rich in experiences, in shared laughter, in mutual support, a life filled with true love, not just expensive things. It was his rebuttal to everyone who called him a nobody. He played it for her one evening in his small, cluttered apartment. As the melody filled the room, Ashley wept. They weren't tears of sadness or regret. They were tears of profound gratitude and recognition. He had seen her, truly seen her, and he had translated her struggle and her hope into something beautiful and eternal. The song was his promise, his vow. It was more valuable to her than any diamond, more secure than any trust fund. It was the sound of her redemption. This song was different from the one that went viral. The first was a raw, spontaneous cry from the heart. This one was a carefully crafted work of art, a polished and powerful piece of music that showcased the depth of his talent. It had a soaring chorus and an unforgettable hook, a song destined for more than just a public square. It was the kind of song that could launch a career, a surprise culmination of all his years of struggle and dedication, inspired by the woman who had turned his world upside down. It was the ultimate proof to all the naysayers. He wasn't using Ashley for fame, she was his muse, the catalyst for the greatest music he had ever written. He wasn't offering her a life of poverty, he was offering her a life of profound richness, a partnership built on creativity and mutual respect. This song was his declaration that their journey of overcoming was not a tragedy, but a triumph. It was the soundtrack to their second chance at a meaningful life. The song was more than just a personal gift to Ashley, it was a beacon of hope. Henry knew he had to share it with the world. The viral video had opened a door, just a crack, but this new song, this powerful, undeniable piece of music was the key that could unlock it completely. He now had the attention of people who mattered, people who could see past the label of broke singer and recognize a true artist. A massive opportunity was waiting just around the corner. The ripples from the viral video did not go unnoticed. In the high-stakes world of the music industry, executives at a major record label, constantly searching for the next authentic voice, saw more than just a fleeting internet moment. They saw raw talent, a compelling backstory, and an artist with a built-in narrative that was pure gold. They heard a heart-aching song that had connected with millions. It was a surprise discovery, an uncut diamond found in the digital rough. An AR executive, a woman known for her keen ear and gutsy signings, tracked Henry down. She didn't meet him in a fancy boardroom, she found him in a small coffee shop, a place where he still felt comfortable. She laid out an offer that was for a broke singer who had been playing for spare change just weeks ago, completely life-altering. It was a multi-album record deal, complete with a significant advance, a marketing budget, and the full backing of their global machine. This was it. The opportunity of a lifetime. The culmination of every empty bar, every ignored demo tape, every moment of doubt. It was a second chance on a scale he had never dared to dream of. His destiny, once so uncertain, was now knocking at his door, offering him everything he had ever worked for. The irony was not lost on him, the billionaire's attempt to destroy his career had inadvertently launched it into the stratosphere. It was the ultimate plot twist. Ashley was overjoyed, her pride in him boundless. This wasn't just a victory for Henry, it was a victory for them, a validation of their choice. It was proof that a life of passion and integrity could lead to success. That true talent could not be silenced. The broke singer was about to become a star, not by compromising who he was, but by being celebrated for it. Their love story was about to get a whole new soundtrack, one produced by the best in the business. The record label wanted to move fast. They arranged for Henry's first official performance, a high-profile industry showcase in a legendary venue. It would be his debut, his introduction to the world as their newest artist. They wanted him to perform his new song, the one inspired by Ashley, believing it had the power to be a massive hit. The stage was set for his triumphant moment of overcoming, a public coronation after a long, hard-fought battle. But the shadow of the billionaire still loomed large. He was a man who hated to lose, and he was watching all of this unfold with a cold, calculating fury. He had been outmaneuvered by a viral video and a simple song, a humiliation that stung more than being left at the altar. He knew about the showcase, about the record deal, and he knew he had one final desperate card to play. He wasn't ready to concede defeat. He was preparing one last dramatic move to reclaim what he believed was his. On the eve of his big showcase, Henry received an unexpected visitor. The billionaire didn't send a lawyer or an assistant, he came himself, a gesture designed to convey the gravity of the moment. He found Henry during a sound check, the empty venue amplifying the tension between them. There was no yelling this time, no insults. Instead, the billionaire presented his final move with the chilling calm of a man making a corporate takeover bid. It was the most audacious plot twist yet. He laid out a staggering offer. He would not only match the record label's deal, he would dwarf it. He offered to create a custom label just for Henry, giving him complete creative control and unlimited budget and global distribution through his own media empire. He would make Henry Simmons bigger than U2, a household name across the planet. He offered him the world on a silver platter, a dream so vast it was almost inconceivable for the once broke singer. And then came the price, the catch, the condition. For this unprecedented generosity was simple and utterly monstrous. Ashley Ford would have to leave Henry and return to him. She would resume her role as his fiancée, and they would proceed with the wedding as if this unfortunate incident had never happened. He presented it not as an emotional plea, but as a logical solution that benefited everyone. A business deal. To end the drama, a way to undo his public humiliation. It was a devil's bargain of the highest order, a test of Henry's character more profound than any financial struggle. The billionaire was trying to buy his dream, and in doing so, prove his cynical worldview that everything and everyone has a price. He was betting that faced with the choice between a woman and a anti-Nalafatime career, the broke singer would reveal himself to be just as transactional as everyone else. It was a cruel, calculated move to destroy their love story from the inside out. Henry listened to the entire proposal without saying a word, his expression unreadable. The billionaire saw this silence as consideration, a sign that his logic was sinking in. He couldn't imagine anyone turning down such an offer. It was a second chance to have it all: fame, the fortune, the security. It was a surprise move and, in his mind, a checkmate. He was weaponizing Henry's own ambition against him, forcing him to choose between his future and his heart. But as the billionaire finished his pitch, a slow, sad smile spread across Henry's face. He finally understood the true poverty of the man standing before him. The billionaire had all the money in the world, but he had no concept of true love or integrity. He saw life as a series of transactions, and he couldn't see the flaw in his own offer. Henry didn't need to think about his answer. He knew exactly what he was going to say, but he decided to wait and deliver his response on a much bigger stage. The night of the showcase arrived, and the venue was buzzing with energy. Music critics, label executives, and industry influencers filled every seat, all there to witness the debut of the internet's most talked about new artist. Backstage, Henry and Ashley shared a quiet moment, their bond stronger than ever. They knew the billionaire was in the audience, not to support, but to spectate, waiting for the outcome of his toxic offer. The tension was a palpable living thing. In the air, Henry walked onto the stage to a roar of applause. He played his viral hit and the crowd sang along, but then he paused. "I have one more song for you tonight," he said, his voice steady. "It's a very personal one. It's about a choice. A choice between everything you've ever wanted and the one thing you can't live without." He looked directly at the billionaire in his VIP seat as he began to play the beautiful, heart-aching song he had written for Ashley. It was his answer, delivered to the entire world. But the billionaire wasn't done. He was a man who demanded the last word. As the song ended, in a move of stunning arrogance, he strode onto the stage, grabbing a microphone from a stunned stagehand. He launched into a grand public speech about forgiveness and second chances, painting himself as the magnanimous hero willing to overlook a foolish mistake. He then turned to Ashley in the wings and publicly presented her with a comically large diamond necklace. "Come home, Ashley," he declared, "end this surprise performance." The crowd gasped. The spectacle was a jaw-dropping plot twist, a soap opera playing out in real time. But instead of panicking or hiding, Ashley Ford walked calmly onto the stage. She took the microphone from the billionaire's hand, her composure unshakable. She looked at the diamond, then at him, and then at the thousands of people watching. "Thank you for the offer," she said, her voice clear and amplified throughout the hall. "But I already have everything I could ever want." She turned her back on him and faced the audience, her eyes finding Henry's. "True wealth isn't something you can wear around your neck or keep in a bank," she announced, her voice filled with an emotional power that captivated everyone. "It's found in kindness, in respect, and in a love that asks for nothing but your heart in return." She then walked over to Henry, took his hand, and held it high. "I choose this man. I choose his love story. I choose this life." It was her final, triumphant act of redemption. The room erupted in a thunderous emotional ovation. The billionaire stood alone on stage, completely and utterly humiliated, a relic of a world that valued things over people. He had lost, not to a rival or a market downturn, but to the one thing he could never understand or acquire: true love. As Henry and Ashley stood together in the spotlight, they weren't a broke singer and a runaway bride anymore. They were two people who had faced down a titan and won, a testament to the power of overcoming and the undeniable truth that the richest hearts are the ones full of love. And so, their incredible journey from a desperate escape at the altar to a triumphant stand on a brightly lit stage comes to its powerful conclusion. What a ride it has been! We've witnessed how a single moment of courage can change a destiny, and how the quiet strength of true love can overcome the loudest and most powerful forces of opposition. This was never just a love story. It was a story about redemption, about finding your voice, and about the profound realization that the most valuable things in life are never for sale. Ashley and Henry's story is a beautiful reminder that true wealth isn't measured by bank accounts, but by the richness of your spirit and the courage in your heart. From a humiliated runaway bride to a woman in control of her own narrative, and from a broke singer to a celebrated artist who never lost his soul, their journey teaches us that the greatest victories are the ones won on the inside. They chose each other, but more importantly, they chose themselves. We were so touched by this story, and we know many of you were as well. If their journey resonated with you, please show your support by hitting that like button. It truly helps our channel grow. Now, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part of this emotional story impacted you the most? And tell us, did you expect a different ending, or do you think this was the perfect desfecho for their story? We read every comment and can't wait to hear your thoughts. For more heart-aching stories that will inspire and move you, make sure you follow the channel and check out some of our older videos. We promise you won't be disappointed. Thank you for spending this time with us, and don't miss our next video.